Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, we even waited a couple extra days, got a couple extra games in there. This Kraken team cannot stop winning. That's all they do. That's all they do is win.
I think we wanted to be sure. Well, really, it was the travel stuff.
Yeah, it was
as you went to the World Juniors, all that. It was travel, but I think we got to be sure of exactly what this team is doing. Got a couple more games to talk about, and yeah, I think we've got a pretty solid narrative at this point.
Yeah, and that is that this Kraken team is on fire right now. They are ascending up the standings like crazy, a point out of first place in the Pacific Division. This team right now is firmly in a playoff spot, and we're going to talk about, is that the expectation kind of moving forward now that we've officially hit the halfway point of the season for the Kraken. They've played 41 of 82 games, so definitely have a big conversation around that, around what's working right now for them with this winning streak, point streak. Also, if you want to extend it out further than that, things like the fourth line are obviously working. Grubauer is still playing fantastic. We'll talk more about him, as well as announcing all of the players that are going to be going to the Olympics from the Kraken and congratulating them now that we have all of the rosters announced there. But of course, first, RJ, here on the pod, we have to thank our wonderful sponsor, the law offices of Rico Tessendor, for sponsoring the podcast, as he does each and every week. And you know who should probably call Rico right now, RJ? Some NHL worthy clients for him. And you know, it might be a little bit of a stretch as far as personal injury, but I can think of a lot of people with some bruised egos because of this Kraken team, particularly a lot of netminders, because this Kraken team's scoring goals, RJ, and it's gotta be affected, some of these netminders.
Yeah, I mean, look at the goalies they faced. Jeremy Swayman, I thought, deserved a lot better in that last game against the Kraken. Made some excellent saves in the second period, but it was just too overwhelming. And yeah, I'm sure the ego's a little bruised there.
Yeah, I mean, 12 goals over their last two games for the Kraken. There's some empty netters in there, but still, this team's scoring a lot. You got 4 each in 3 of their previous 4 games there. Like this team is putting up a lot of numbers. These goaltenders, these poor goaltenders, right? Especially the East Coast ones coming over here. They're expecting the easy game. They're like, oh, the Kraken, they can't score any goals. Their coach is like, yeah, you're getting that game. And they're probably focused on something else, game planning for a different team. And then this goalie just comes out there and gets shell-shocked for 6 goals like Swayman did yesterday. I don't know. I think he might have a case against his coach.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something on the basis of false advertising. That's not really Rico's purview, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. But I want to thank Rico for sponsoring the pod like he does each and every week. While we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. All right, RJ, let's just briefly congratulate everybody going to the Olympics from the Seattle Kraken team, because we kind of officially can now.
Yeah, now that we got the last of the announcements out of the way, I was waiting for that to officially announce it, but got the last of the smaller Olympic countries. And so Kraken have 4 players going to the Olympics. We'll start with Philipp Grubauer for Team Germany. He was one of their original 6 named. We knew he was going for a while. Best German goalie in the world, and it's not close. I mean, but do we need to remove the word German from that statement? Yeah. Maybe. But yeah, Grubauer going for Germany. We've known that. Kaapo Kakko and Eli Tolvanen both going for Team Finland. So that's cool. We thought maybe one, maybe both, but they are both selected off a strong season for Tolvanen. And then I think, Kakko still rough year with the injuries, but I think he's still certainly one of the best 12 Finnish forwards that they're going to have. So they're both going for Team Finland. And then Oscar Fisker Molgaard going for Team Denmark. This also felt like kind of a no-brainer. He wasn't one of their original 6 players that was picked, but he's an NHLer. He's played some NHL games this year, and that's certainly good enough to get you onto the Denmark roster. And I mean, he might even be their 2C. So that'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see him play, probably with some NHL players too.
Right. And well, and he was a part of the team that got them here too, right? Like last year. So in the national team and everything. So I'm excited to see him at the Olympics. I think it'll be a nice showcase for him, not just for, obviously the international audience that's going to be paying attention to the Olympics, but the national audience here and even some Kraken fans, right? You may have only seen him in those handful of games that he's gotten earlier this season, the 2 games that he's gotten. I think it'll be just nice for Kraken fans to kind of see him in a more elevated position in that lineup and kind of what he can actually do when he's playing with guys like that.
Yeah, it's fun for a prospect too, and really good for development, I would imagine, too,
Hmm.
to play in that elevated role, play against some pretty stacked odds and stacked teams. They say playing against better players makes you better.
Yep.
Gonna have to take on some very stacked and skilled teams and take on some tough matchups. So I think he's gonna benefit from that.
I do, especially with his style of play, how like responsible he is defensively, how smart he is in the offensive zone, the forechecking, the back checking. Like he could be one of those guys that, is he going to lead Denmark to a medal or something insane like that? No, that's not going to happen. But he could really be a thorn in the side of some of the larger countries and what they're going to be doing out there, and whoever he's matched up against. It would not surprise me if he causes them problems, and that is a pretty big victory when you're talking about a tournament like this.
Yeah, Team USA, the big matchup on that schedule for Team Denmark. So we'll see how he stops some of America's best players.
Yep, exactly. All right. You mentioned Philip Grubauer. We got to talk about Philip Grubauer. You mentioned that could be obviously best goalie, best German goalie, could be best goalie in the world. Certainly, the way he's playing right now in the NHL, you could say that he's the best goaltender in the NHL, and usually that means in the world.
Yeah, I think the best goalies probably in the NHL, I would say. I think that's a pretty safe
Usually,
statement.
yeah.
But look, we've talked about Philip Grubauer a little bit last week or last couple weeks. Just he's been good all season, and we kind of slowly built up to like, wow, he's good. Okay, he's really good. And so we won't throw a bunch of stats at you like we did last week, but I think it is worth mentioning. You update those stats and you look after yet another week, and he has climbed to at or near the top of the leaderboard in just about every major goaltending stat, and certainly on a per game basis for the ones that are counting stats. He has been the best goalie in the NHL over the last couple months now. So it's long enough that I think we could say this is real. Now, goaltending doesn't make sense. We have no idea how long this is going to last, but it matches the eye test. He looks like one of the best goalies in the league right now, and the numbers back that up.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Again, we've kind of thrown out all the reasons for this over the last couple weeks, whether it's been here on the deep dive or on post game live situations like that. The defensive mindset for the team is certainly helping him out, where shots are coming from, his ability to then go and play his angles more aggressively. That's still the big thing for me, is just kind of how aggressive he's being. He's playing out towards the top of his crease rather than back at the goal line. We talk about rebound control and kind of what he's doing there. Jonathan last night on post game talked about that a little bit. So it's not just any one thing that is making Grubauer better. Obviously, of course, Colin Zulinello being the new goaltending coach for the Kraken, somebody who's helping him out. It's no one thing that's helping have this turnaround for Philip Grubauer. It's lots of different things in combination working together to give this incredible result. Really happy for Gru and his ability to have this season and put it together. I think it's going to be a great way for him to go into the Olympics. He can then go and be a problem for other teams having to play Germany in the Olympics. I think that would be a lot of fun to watch for Kraken fans and for all of us. So I'm just happy for him that this is real. And what's kind of crazy, RJ, is you watch these games that Grubauer's starting, and then you watch the games that Joey's starting. And I mean, I just think right now is inspiring more confidence in not just me as a viewer, but potentially in the team as well. Like they seem to be playing a little bit more aggressive now in front of Gru because they just feel like they can trust him.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that no player would ever say. You never want to say you kind
I
of
don't know
prefer
that
one
it's
of your
even
goalies over the other.
conscious, right? Like I think it's just something like it just as the game unfolds, it just kind of happens.
Right. And I think, I mean, as a viewer, I think it's easier to see that sort of thing and in the results. Yeah. But I agree with you completely. And it's been interesting because the Kraken have had 4 straight sets of back to backs, weird scheduling quirk where it's been alternating every start because that's just what you do on back to backs. There hasn't really been an opportunity to have a starter pull away and get most of the games recently. But I do wonder, with that coming to an end now on Thursday, does Grubauer start to see extra starts? I mean, is he going to kind of pull away as the starting goalie for this team? Because frankly, I think he should. I'm a big believer in the hot hand as far as goaltending, and that you should just play whoever's the better goalie at any given moment. And right now, that's Philip Grubauer. Like, I would start him against Minnesota. If he plays well, I'd start him again against Carolina, and I would just kind of keep rolling with him and, maybe do 2 starts for every one Decord start.
Yeah, I would too at this point. I just think we're at that place where Gru is just he's playing better again, and it's not just like, oh, he's being better than Joey Decord right now, as we're talking about. He's being better than anybody else in the National Hockey League, right? Like, how do you not start the guy who's putting up the best numbers in the league, right? Like, that just I don't even think that needs to be controversial for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's nothing against Joey Decord, by the way. That's not
Yeah.
at all what this is. It's just, yeah, Grubauer is the best. I can't believe we're saying this. I can't believe this is real. Tell us this at the start of the season, or even a year ago, as Grubauer was sent down to the AHL in January of last year. Like, that's kind of when things went off the rails for him. I mean, it really is one of the more remarkable stories in the league this year.
Mhm.
Just Grubauer's resurgence and how much better he's been.
Yeah. No, it's really fantastic. Really, really happy for him. And
Easy guy to
obviously
root
it's
for too. It's nice
definitely
to see it come together for him.
Definitely, and obviously happy about what it's meant for the Seattle Kraken as well. Their ability to kind of get out of that funk that they were in, the massive losing streak, be able to string together a pretty nice win/point streak here for them. It's done a lot for them. One of the other components of this point streak that the Kraken are on here, RJ, is the fourth line. And we haven't talked a ton about them yet, so we'll do that now. But the fourth line has been absolutely cooking since Jacob Melanson was added to that group, and he's come in and started playing with them. Ben Myers is playing really well right now. I mean, this fourth line is a big reason why the Kraken are finding themselves here towards the top of the standings within the division and Western Conference.
Absolutely. And I feel like I've mentioned it in all of our post-game debriefs that I've handled, like while you were at the World Juniors and everything. It came up every single time. And I mean, the reason it has is they're dominating their matchups, and more importantly, they are scoring. 5 games in a row now, that fourth line has contributed a goal. And when your depth guys can score for you, it takes a lot of the pressure off the rest of the forwards, especially for this team that, low again, until a couple games ago, lowest scoring team in the NHL. 1 goal matters a whole lot if you're playing this kind of defensive way that the Kraken are. And when your fourth line's contributing, that is absolutely huge. We saw the effect of that very different looking team, but year 2 for the Kraken, when the fourth line was a scoring threat basically throughout the whole season. The Donato, Geeky, and Sprong line, it can really turn the tables for you as a matchup issue. And at least for the last 5 games, that's been what this line has been bringing to the Kraken. It's another one of those things where it's like, how sustainable is this? But as long as it keeps going, it is very hard to lose games when your fourth line scoring every single night.
No, and you look at the way that they're playing and the way that they're kind of clicking and the work that they're putting in out there. It feels sustainable, right? Like, maybe not the scoring every game is maybe not going to always be sustainable. They are a fourth line. They're only going to be getting like 10 minutes a night, so there's only so much opportunity that you can realistically have. But like, I look at the goal that Ben Myers is able to get last night. I look at really all the goals that they've been scoring, and they're all them capitalizing on the matchups, for one, but two, putting in the work to create higher danger chances than really a lot of the rest of the Kraken are able to kind of put together. But I look at the goal last night, and that's just great job of working a down low physical cycle, right? Playing below the goal line, into the corners. Those are the kinds of areas, and when you can cycle that way and be aggressive in that way, it pulls the defense way out of position. That is not where any defense wants to play in the National Hockey League, is below their own goal line, into the corners. They having to commit at least one defenseman there. A lot of teams end up committing two defensemen there. The center is going to be down there for them. It just opens up so many pockets around the offensive zone in higher scoring areas. And that's what this fourth line's been able to do, has been able to grind down low. Guys like Melanson, obviously Ben Myers has been able to do it. But, then regardless of who else is out there on with the fourth line, because we've seen a couple different guys out there with them, whether it's Winterton, whether it's Ty Cartier, they're able to go in there, win those battles, hold on to the puck long enough to suck in all those defenders, and then you make the pass out to whichever guy is the third one out there, and they just have a lot of time and space in high danger areas, and they're capitalizing on those chances. The other thing that they're doing, I feel like, is because they're all playing pretty well defensively, they fit the system that Lane Lambert's running in their own zone so well. They've been one of the top lines as far as being able to get up ice and start those counterattacks, and they find themselves in odd man rush situations, and they're capitalizing on those. Again, higher percentage chance that you're going to score in an odd man rush, 2-on-1, something like that. They are capitalizing on those opportunities. They're generating those opportunities when they're out there. I mean, they're doing it in the most sustainable way, really, of any line on this team. They're doing the things most sustainably. So that's why I do think like there is a little bit of something actually to this beyond just, oh, hey, maybe they're all like on a shooting bender together. No, they're actually putting in the work, and they're finding ways of stringing together high quality chances really in a way that the rest of the Kraken team hasn't. We'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about how this is kind of a excuse me, like a mismatch of different players on this forward group, and that not all of them are really built to play the Lane Lambert style, because they were built for a few different coaches over the years when these players were acquired. But I think what we're seeing with this fourth line is just pure system fit. Like all of these guys are just built to play this way, whether it's Ryan Winterton, who has just thrived under Lane Lambert. I mean, he actually got the promotion up to the second line last game because with Ellie Tolvanen hurt. And so Cartier slides right in there, does great, gets an assist, looks like a normal member of that fourth line. But whether it's Winterton, Ben Myers, who brought in a little more recently and just has clicked so well with the system as well. And then Jacob Melanson, who, I mean, I think of the three guys, he might be the biggest story because of what he's doing. He's gets his first career goal the other day in Calgary, and that was I think a 4-game point streak for him as well. He's producing, and he is just looking like a great fit. And I mean, he's an NHL player. As a later draft pick, you're never sure, but he's a bona fide NHLer, and so that's got to be a good sign for the Kraken. Is Myers, a little older, more of kind of a journeyman type of guy, tweener type of guy, but Melanson looks to be a mainstay in the bottom six for a while. But they're playing like a normal fourth line. They're doing the things this system demands, and I'm with you. I don't think the scoring is like every game is sustainable. I don't think they're going to score a goal every game for the next 41. The finishing is probably going to go down a little bit, but as far as the quality that they're generating and how they're dominating the matchups, like I even look into the analytics and the advanced stats, like their expected goals is not that much lower than their actual goals generated. Like they are actually generating the quality there. It's not just a shooting bender for these guys.
Right. No, I really think the way that they're playing is something that the rest of the team could kind of look at and try to emulate and try to go out there and do it themselves. Obviously, the fourth line is getting better matchups, so it's going to be easier for them than, say, Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle having to go out there and do that against whatever top defensive matchup another team is going to throw at them. But I do think, when you can get that cycle going down low, it's so difficult to defend. You have to commit so many resources to defending it. It opens things up. When you can get that counterattack going and get those odd man rush opportunities, you're just going to convert on those chances more than when you're just trying to go into the zone and shoot from the point, which has been a lot of what the Kraken have tried to do this year. So I do think like there's some stuff there. Let's talk about Jacob Melanson though real quick. You mentioned that he's probably the story out of this group, and certainly I agree with you, at least as of here lately, because I think Ryan Winterton has really been the story of the year for this group. But we've talked about him plenty coming out of training camp and him making the team and all of that. Jacob Melanson comes up, brings just a different energy to this line, right? Like even different than Ryan Winterton. Ryan Winterton, great system fit. He's doing all of those things. Jacob Melanson comes into this lineup. He has 51 hits in 12 games. He is just trying to crush everything in front of him, drawing national attention for the style of play that he's playing with. Jeff Merrick called him out on his show in a positive way, called him the Kraken Crusher, and brought up the idea of like, is this kind of the prototype for the kind of player that the Seattle Kraken kind of want to build around moving forward, and the future identity of the team is more players like Jacob Melanson. And so I'm curious your thoughts on that, RJ, because certainly the physicality has been there, the hard work has been there, the speed surprisingly has been there from Melanson, and then yeah, he's starting to put up some points here. So just your thoughts on the idea of him maybe being the mold that this team wants to kind of try to find more players to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about role players, then absolutely. I think when you're building a team, you're looking at different roles and everything. And I think if you had maybe 12 Jacob Melansons, it's probably a little short of a competitive team. But for that specific role, yes, I think Merrick is right. And this is the goal, I think the end goal of a lot of the Kraken's drafting and development for players further down in the draft. When you draft top 5, you're hoping for superstars, but when you draft, as late as Jacob Melanson was taking, you're hoping for a productive player. And if you can get someone like that in the 5th round, you've absolutely succeeded in your drafting development. So I think there's an element to that. I think I want to give Melanson credit, but I want to just give everyone on that 4th line credit because they're all doing their thing. But there was a point I was going to make with Melanson too. The fact that he's also just doing all this responsibly, like that. Mm-hmm. And I know you've talked about this a lot, but that they've kind of reined in the dumb penalties that he would take in junior and those sorts of things. He knows exactly where the line is, and he is a professional about it. And that's what I've been maybe most impressed by, because, look, we knew the edge was kind of there. We knew that the speed and the skill game, he showed it in Coachella Valley. Like mm-hmm. He showed at that level, he was able to, and I'm not surprised it's translating, but the fact that he just looks like so much of a pro early on, where he's not doing anything dumb. He's not putting the team in any bad spots, and he's only being helpful. I'm really impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, forever going back to when he was drafted, coming up through, finishing his career in the queue, and then really that first like year and a half in Coachella Valley, right? I would do the prospect chats, and the number one thing I'd talk about with him was the undisciplined penalties. Him actively hurting his team by taking penalties in really inopportune situations and times. It could be a tie game late, and he would just go out there and do something unwise, put himself in the box, give a power play to the other team, or the Firebirds would be trying to come back down a goal, and he does the same thing. And it was just, there needed to be kind of better situational awareness for the kind of play and the style of play that he wants to bring. And I've talked about it also on over the last basically year and a half of those prospect chats. Whenever we talk about the Firebirds, we look at Jacob Melanson. He has changed. It was not like an overnight, flip the switch process, but to his credit, he has worked really, really hard to cut back on the undisciplined penalties to the point where he has now played 12 games in the National Hockey League, 0 PIMs, not a single penalty minute yet from him, while still maintaining that physical edge, the ability to get under the opposing player's skin, right? Do all of those positive things that a player like Jacob Melanson can bring, just with none of the negative, literally none of the negative. Not like, oh, he cut way back on the negative, but it's still there. No, like there's literally been none of it. He has not taken a single penalty, disciplined or undisciplined. And I think that that's huge, that he's not putting himself in the situations anymore where he feels like he has to then take a penalty. And he's also just keeping himself in check for the moments where maybe things get a little bit heated, and he's not kind of crossing the line the way that he was before. And that is huge. And that is the difference between him being an NHL player now versus not back when he first went to Coachella Valley in those first couple of years he was with the Firebirds, because I really think that was going to keep him from being in this opportunity and get these extended looks with the Kraken. It was just the undisciplined play.
Yeah, and I mean, you see the 0 penalty minutes. That also means no fights. And you look at this recent run, though, often a fight in these games, the Kraken have been scoring first usually. They've been kind of cruising. They've been playing their game. A fight might just disrupt momentum. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really, I mean, I think the one fight I can recall, and I don't have an issue with it because of the larger context, but like Jared McCann fighting
Yeah.
Connor Garland in that Canucks game, that's one of the games they lose. And so you don't want to be inserting yourself there if you're Jacob Melanson and kind of creating fights out of nowhere. It's not the time for it. When it is the time for it, I'm sure he won't shy away.
Yes.
But you're just seeing a lot of smarts there and responsibility. So
Definitely. Now, as for the idea of like the mold and everything, and I totally agree with you, right? Obviously, like 12 Melansons does not make a great forward group. But do you think there's something to the idea of Lane Lambert is going to be coach here for a little while and they want to go out and try to find players that are going to fit his system? The way like Melanson fits the system, Ryan Winterton fits the system, but not just the depth pieces, also try to find guys higher up in the lineup that can fit that system. Given that, look, there's a lot of UFAs on this team still, there's going to be the ability to really overhaul this roster in a pretty significant way this upcoming offseason. Do you think they look at the success of guys like Ryan Winterton, Jacob Melanson, the team success that the team is having right now as a group under Lane Lambert, and they say, well, look, it's not like we're looking to go into a fourth coach in 4 years or anything anytime soon, and they try to build a roster around Lane Lambert and his systems?
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I think one that I'll really dive into on the Armchair GM stream as we kind of know a little bit more about what this team is and where they're going, and that bottoming out really is not an option or a consideration, unlike last month when we were talking about it.
Yes.
But I think there might be something to that. I don't think it'll be as much with the drafted players because those just take so long, and those
Yeah.
guys were all drafted and mostly developed in a time where Lane Lambert was not even on the Kraken's radar. I think you're just going to see some guys that are fits, like like Melanson, like say an Oscar Fisker Molgard, like that are already just happen to be there in the system. And on the flip side, some guys that aren't fits, like Yanni Newman. I do worry for him. Where's the
Yeah.
opportunity ever going to be for him? We've talked about Shane Wright. So, there is that issue, but I think, yeah, as far as the offseason acquisitions, they might have a lot of spots to fill. And, it might end up being players that are a better fit for the Lambert system. And I wonder what that looks like too, because, there's not as many players available. If you're just looking at like free agency trades, you kind of have to play it based on what the market is. But I'm sure they are going to go for the fits there. As for the first time ever, Fuji has jumped up onto my desk during a podcast.
I was gonna say Fuji's really engaged today. He's loving to talk about the fourth line. I think is what's going on there with Fuji. I will say this, and then we can kind of close this section out. Looking at free agency and kind of what you could do there. Obviously, we tend to look at free agency from the can they bring in a true difference making player, and the answer is always no, because virtually those guys never hit free agency, and when they do, they're not exactly looking at joining the Kraken when they're there. If you're looking for guys that can play defensive systems and take advantage of opportunities and do all of that kind of stuff, I mean, those are the players that are available in free agency. So like those would be the ones that they could potentially go out there and grab. Last question on the fourth line, RJ, and this was just one that was posed a lot yesterday in the post game live. I think that it's one of those things that I say to fans, worry about it when the time comes, like just try to enjoy the ride right now. But everybody already kind of focusing on what happens to this fourth line when Jaden Schwartz comes back. Obviously Ellie Tolvanen missed yesterday's game. Normally he'd be in the lineup. That means or it's meant that Ty Karche is not in the lineup. But what does it mean roster wise when Jaden Schwartz is healthy enough to return to this lineup, because it is going to mean some form of disruption kind of working its way down the group.
Yeah, and I really do wonder about that. And I'm curious for your take on it, Dylan, because this is something even that just us in the media were discussing, out by the water cooler at the second intermission. Who comes out when Jaden Schwartz comes back in? And none of us really had any good answers if you want to keep the fourth line intact. I think the easy answer is to disrupt the fourth line, take somebody off of it, whether it's, I just, pick any of them. I'd pick maybe not Melanson, but just take somebody off that fourth line and insert Schwartz in the lineup and bump somebody down. But if you want to leave that intact, like what are the alternatives if you want to keep that fourth line together? Once Tolvanen is not sick anymore. I was my
not a good one.
No, I mean I think there are no good answers. I'll let everyone know to the media people I was talking to. My suggestion at that time was maybe Berkeley Catton. because, he's the youngest of the group. He hasn't exactly been producing. And by the way, this was
This is
no, it was, it was first
yesterday.
intermission. I think it was before he scored his first career goal. So it was just minutes before, actually. So I was suggesting maybe Berkeley Catton, but I think that's not really anything you'd want to do now. So, I mean, Dylan, what would you do if you were to keep the fourth line intact? Who sits?
Well, that is, it's a big problem, and it's a big issue that you got to figure out. And for me, it's not even just so much like who sits, but like you're going to need the roster spot, right?
No,
Like,
no, you're not.
no. Okay, that's
no,
good.
because you have an extra roster spot right now.
Yeah. The problem
you
around
sit Newman down.
Right. The problem with everything is just like, you can't waive Ty Cartier, you're going to lose him. You can't waive Ben Myers, you're going to lose him. So you can't like make the roster move around those guys. But as far as who sits, I think the most likely thing that we probably see is Jaden Schwartz comes back, joins the top six. Freddie Gaudreau gets pushed down to the fourth line and then probably slides over to the center spot. And that means Ben Myers is out of the lineup. That's my guess for most likely what we see. I think that's the least disruptive thing. I think that Lane Lambert seems very committed to Ryan Winterton and keeping him in the lineup. I think that he's going to be very committed to Jacob Melanson, and I would be very committed to Jacob Melanson and keeping him in the lineup right now. As much as I love what Ben Myers is doing, and quite frankly, I think he's a better 4C than Freddie Gaudreau is right now. He's winning more faceoffs. I think he's producing, and they're being able to win those matchups. He's not that far off production wise from what Freddie Gaudreau has been able to do this year. They've both played roughly the same amount of games, tied in goals, very close in points. I think Ben Myers has just arguably been a better fit than Freddie Gaudreau has been. But I think that's the most likely scenario. And I do think it's the least disruptive scenario is that Freddie Gaudreau goes back down to the fourth line, slides over to the center spot, and then Ben Myers is out of the lineup.
Yeah, I think that's probably most realistic. Like if I had to, bet on an outcome, I'd say that's probably what it would be. But I hate the idea of disrupting this fourth line.
Well, that's my thing. It's a bummer. Like, let's not deal with it until Jaden Schwartz is actually back. Like, he's skating, but he's not here yet.
Yeah, that's true. And I know Lane Lambert kind of poured cold water on, the timeline for return is when he was asked about it with Schwartz skating again and out of the no contact jersey and all that stuff. So, and hey, good news. This means there's less reason to rush him back.
Yeah.
You can be cautious. You can be safe about it. I think that's generally a good thing to do, especially for a player who's had the injury history that Schwartz has.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with that. You mentioned the Berkeley Catton stuff. I do think we need to talk about that real quick before we get into the big picture stuff with the team. Berkeley Catton scoring both his first and second NHL goals last night, RJ. And I thought both goals just perfect representations of who he is as a player. The first goal, not the prettiest situation and goal there, taking a shot far out from the perimeter, one-timer, throwing it on net, see what happens. But good heads-up play from him to take that opportunity. Swayman unable to deal with it, and he gets his first goal. And then the second one, RJ, just putting the skill on display, what he can do, charges in, gets that puck in a good spot, makes the move, cuts short side on Jeremy Swayman, RJ, and then just backhands it up into the top twine and out. Like, just beautiful to watch that play.
Yeah, and it just feels like the type of look that he's had, fairly often and just has not been able to put one in. It feels like the floodgates are open for Berkeley Catton. He's kind of unburdened by that first goal thing. And I think it's fitting that the first goal comes on a shot that, from a bad angle, just throws it on net, still willing to have that shooting mentality, as I think he really has this entire time, and gets rewarded as I think it was probably going wide, but goes in off the blocker of Swayman. And then just, he looked that extra, half step faster afterwards. And I do think it ends up being a confidence thing as you're looking for that first goal. And it feels like, what do I have to do to put this puck in the net? And I really think a lot of goals are coming for Berkeley Catton in short order now. Took 28 games to get the first one, took 32 additional minutes to get the second one. Yeah, he's due for a few more, I think.
I definitely think so. And again, we've been talking about it for so long. I mean, there was the goal drought. There was an assist drought too. Like, there was just a general lack of production from Berkeley Catton that was just not matching how well he was playing. And we were talking about that a lot for the last couple podcasts, last couple post-game lives and all of that. I mean, his last point prior to last night came all the way back on November 26th. right? Because obviously he was hurt, missed a lot of December, but he was not matching with the player that we were all seeing, right? He was playing well, putting himself in position to be earning points, to be able to score goals, all of that stuff. Really happy for him to finally get over that hump, get those 2 goals last night. And yeah, I'm excited for more goals from him for sure, but I'm also excited for more production, as it also seems that line and his, at least his chemistry with Shane Wright, is also starting to develop and look pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's one of the things that really sunk in after that game, where you see how happy Shane Wright going and collecting that first goal puck, Jared McCann just jumping for joy on the way over to celebrate with Catton, how happy his line mates were. And I think Jared McCann has really been a mentor to those guys on that line, especially Berkeley Catton. And he's really taken that upon himself once this line's been put together, and really all season. But you could see just the pride on his face, how proud he was of Berkeley Catton, and finally getting over that hump and scoring the first goal. And the way that he's handled everything, with the goal drought, the point drought, and still not changing the way he is as a player. And it's just, this is the kind of stuff with Jared McCann where I've always enjoyed just the player he is in the room, and how supportive he is of his teammates, how intense he is. He hates to lose, but he also will take these kind of things upon himself to shepherd a young player along. And he said last night, he said, I remember when I was a young player in this league, and I had to have I had those struggles and I had those issues, and you're going to have your ups and downs, and to have somebody there means so much. And like, you're really seeing that line come together. And I think before Catton gets that goals, everyone's still like, oh, he's not scoring, whatever. You don't see it, but then in that moment of joy from everybody, like, you see how much work has gone into that and how much the guys care.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was really cool to see the big hug Shane had for him when he got to the bench. I mean, all of it was fantastic, and it was what you want to see in that moment. And I think it was a good thing for Kraken fans to be able to take that in, because I know how excited they all were and how eagerly they were awaiting the opportunity to celebrate once he got that first goal. I think a lot of fans are feeling just like Jared McCann and Shane Wright watching that all happen there.
And I'll say this, I don't think I've ever seen Jared McCann happier over any of his own achievements.
Right.
I think he was happier for this Berkeley Catton goal than for anything that he has done himself.
I totally agree with you watching that there. So congrats to Berkeley Catton on the first of many more to come, hopefully. All right. Looking at the big picture, and I will say we're going to talk about not just the Kraken, but the overall kind of state of the division and the Western Conference, and the playoff picture and everything here, RJ. We're also going to be talking a little bit about analytics models in a broad sense and everything. And I just want to let everybody know that while we'll talk about that stuff as it relates to the Kraken today, we'll probably also talk about that same stuff on the Red Glare podcast coming out on Friday, which, as of the new year, by the way, first podcast of the new year, yay. As of the new year, that is available to the public. It is no longer behind the Patreon paywall. Just want to let everybody know. You can go out and search Red Glare Podcast on YouTube. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to that, that would be awesome. We would appreciate that. And you can hear, all of our thoughts on the NHL as a whole, kind of looking at really everything but the Seattle Kraken over there on that podcast. We had a good first episode. Looking forward to the episode we can record this upcoming Friday. Give my general thoughts on the World Junior Tournament on that. I'll save certainly the Kraken's prospect specific stuff and some of the fun stories for the prospect chat on Patreon later this month. But I do want to just let everybody know that Red Glare podcast is out now. It's on its own separate channel. It's not going to be published here where the deep dive is. And that counts not just for on YouTube, but also it has its own separate podcast feed. So in your podcast app of choice, you can go and search Red Glare podcast and find it there.
Yeah, and on social media too, we're just at Red Glare Podcast. You can find us. I create an Instagram account, new Twitter, all that stuff. So you can go ahead and give those a follow if you want. And yeah, I'm so excited to kind of have that out to everybody. And also, if you know anybody who's maybe not a Kraken fan of some other team in the NHL, I know you guys got friends like that, might be interested in our takes on the league-wide stuff. Make sure to let them know that we have that podcast out, available to the public. And I can't wait, because it's such a fun time too. It's got a little bit more of a casual conversational tone than the deep dive sometimes. And, a lot of jokes, a lot of fun stuff on there. So yeah, give it a listen, give it a try.
Definitely. All right. So as for the Seattle Kraken here, RJ, they are on this point streak that I've mentioned several times now. It goes back a healthy amount of ways. They're 1 point out of the division lead. And I know you had the question that you wanted to ask me, but I'm going to beat you to it. And I'm going to ask you, RJ, how high can this team go right now? Obviously, with this win streak, they're up there towards the top of the division. They're looking pretty good in the overall wild card race too. Like, forget about just the division, the wild card race. I mean, so much of this is not just them and their turnaround, but it's also just the fact that they are getting help from literally everybody, whether it's in division, in conference, wild card race wise. This Western Conference wild card race and just playoff everything. You know, you've already called it the Turtle Derby. I think it's worse than that. I think this is like a sink to the bottom of the ocean style race. I don't know what any team in this conference is doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the division, basically there's the three great teams in the Central, and then everybody else in the West. And so I think that is the context for everything that we're about to talk about as far as expectations, playoffs, everything for the Kraken, because you look at the Pacific Division, not a single team has a positive goal differential in the Pacific Division. As of like before yesterday, every team had a negative goal differential in the Pacific Division. Not a single team has more wins than losses in the Pacific Division. There are no good teams in the division. It is wild. And if you want to put this into some historical context, this would be so Vegas right now, if you look at just the pace for points this season, they're at a 96-point pace. They're at the top of the division with 96 points on this pace. That would be the worst Pacific Division winner in the salary cap era. Since there were ties and loser points and all this stuff, it would be the worst. It would be the lowest. It would be close, very close to the worst division winner of any kind in the salary cap era. If you remember, Dylan, or those who've been around for 15 plus years, the old Southeast division, often called the Southleast division. The Capitals won that in 2008 with 94 points, and the Panthers won it in 2012 with 94 points. That's also, though, back when there were 3 divisions per conference, so easier to have a lower division winner. So really, in a lot of ways, this is unprecedented. This sort of environment has never happened before. And as a result, the Kraken are right in there. The Kraken at a 94-point pace halfway through the season, which would be good for second in the division, 2 points out of number 1 in the division. So you ask, how high can they go? This year, they can win the division. It is absolutely possible and attainable for them, looking at how the other teams are doing. Now, you know, that 96-point pace Vegas is on, which would win the division this year, by the way, would not have been good enough to even make the playoffs last year. Calgary had 96 points. They missed out entirely, of course, being in the Pacific Division. It's just totally different this year versus any other year. So that's the context in which we're operating here. So I think that's just important to know, especially as we talk about the Kraken later, like, you know, long term and all that sort of thing. You got to grade on a curve here, yes. But this is the situation they're in. You play the hand you're dealt, and this is the hand they're dealt. It's a pretty darn good hand.
It really, really is. I mean, this is the best setup that you could ever ask for anybody. And I've seen the question asked so many times, whether it's to us, comments on videos, post game live yesterday, whether it's to different outlets or just kind of fans talking in general in various places around the internet. And so many people ask during this point streak of, are the Kraken good? And it's a complicated answer. And I said it last night on the post game live that, look, in the conventional sense for sports teams and competition in general, I mean, they're winning right now. And so that means they're good, because that's just kind of what it means. And it kind of works out that way. And certainly when you're a point out of, you know, leading the division, that's also good. Like, that is just objectively good to be in that spot if you don't look at anything else. And I think that needs to be said. I think that we can talk about that and say that, yes, within the context of this Western Conference, it's certainly the Pacific Division, the Kraken are good, and you can just enjoy the wins and the points and the streak that they're on and the way that they're playing, because they are, and I think this is when, you can start going beyond just kind of, you know, with the asterisk, yes, they're good. They're just playing better hockey than most of these teams. Like they are. Like straight up go watch an LA Kings game. Kraken are playing better hockey than the Kings are. You go and you watch some of these Vegas games, and I would argue the Kraken are playing better hockey than they are. Maybe not from like an analytics standpoint, but just like visually. The Kraken, as crazy as this sounds after what we've talked about earlier this season, and I still don't think it holds if you were to look at certainly the top teams in the league, but even like just even a lot of the Eastern Conference, the Kraken look like they genuinely have more of a plan and more team cohesion than most teams in the West right now, and certainly within the division. And that to me, I know we're going to talk about the analytics and what those say, but that one component this year makes me think that this is sustainable and that playoffs have to be the expectation for this group. It's not just where they are in the standings, it's the fact that they actually look like they're playing like a team. And I generally think that playing like a team is better than maybe saying having a better roster and but not having that cohesion and not being on the same page. And I'm not just saying this because I was just at World Juniors and that very much played out that way with Canada only getting up to the bronze and USA getting knocked out in the quarterfinals. But like I do think that holds in the National Hockey League. And right now, the Kraken are playing more like a team than I think anybody else in the Pacific Division. Maybe Edmonton is playing more like a team, and Vegas at times does. But certainly when you look at like LA, San Jose, Anaheim, the other teams in the division, and the teams kind of fighting for the wild card spots right now, the Kraken just look more put together than they do.
Yeah, a lot more. And I think a lot of Kraken fans have probably seen it firsthand because the Kraken have faced a lot of those teams recently that they've been competing with. I mean, you look at this long stretch of wins and you have LA, San Jose, Anaheim, Nashville, Vancouver, Calgary all in there. And those are the teams that are trying to compete for these final wild card spots or some of the division spots. And yeah, the Kraken look a heck of a lot more put together than those teams. I mean, especially you look at, like the Calgary's, Nashville's, Vancouver's. I mean, they are just kind of in a pathetic state right now, the way those teams are playing. And yeah, I mean, that's another thing that just gives me confidence is you look around the rest of the West and there are no real threats there. None whatsoever. I don't think any of these teams, Vegas and Edmonton at any point could turn it on and just, leave the Kraken in the dust. But two teams is not enough to knock them out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. These other teams, I just don't think I cannot see them just putting it together and going on a run. And so I'm with you, Dylan. I think playoffs at this point have to be the expectation. And I said last week that, the expectation had to be either playoffs or top 3 lottery odds because both were so easily attainable. Mm-hmm. And just pick a direction. That's all I asked. And the Kraken have certainly picked a direction. That direction is up. That direction is toward the playoffs. And so I can't believe we're saying this, go to me a month ago and it would sound unthinkable, but January 7th right now, it's playoffs or bust for the Kraken this season. That's it. That's the expectation. If they miss the playoffs, that means that they were bad. They were flat out bad from here on. And there's no excuse for that in the division that they have, given the schedule that they have. That's it. It's playoffs or bust. That needs to be the expectation.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And again, based on how they're playing versus the other teams that would have to come up and get them and catch them, I don't see it happening. I think like, maybe the Kings pull it together. Maybe they fire their coach, right? And they pull it together. You'd still need multiple wildcard teams to do that and come together and try to figure things out. I mean, the midnight bell rang for Anaheim. They're a mess now, 1-7-2 in their last
now out of a playoff spot.
10 out of a playoff spot. Like they are struggling mightily. Their goal differential's down to a -13 now. The Sharks have really only been staying afloat because of Macklin Celebrini. Right? Like the analytics for the Sharks are just as bad as they are for the Kraken. They have just
They're
been
the 2 worst teams in the league analytically.
Yes. And they basically have been all season. So like it's why it's felt unsustainable for San Jose, but they also have one of the best players in the league now. So maybe them hanging on to a wild card spot is sustainable just because of what Celebrini can do. But Utah does not look like they want to figure things out at all. And like I don't know what their issue is. Nashville has still so many problems to them. They don't feel like a team that's going to be serious. St. Louis, same thing. They don't feel like a team that's going to be serious. Chicago needs to get healthy. They've been without Bedard and Frank Nazar now for a while. Their two best players, certainly their two best forwards, and that's affected them. Maybe when those guys come back, Chicago maybe can try to put something together. But I look at this Western Conference. I look at the rest of the division. I look at the schedule the Kraken have as well for the second half of the season. I again, they would have to truly lose this playoff spot. Nobody else is going to come and take it from them. They would have to give it up at this point, now that we're at the halfway mark and where they're at in the standings and where everybody else is at in the standings, and the way that they're playing eye test wise. That is just what the situation is. And I don't think they will. Like I think they're playing well enough. I think Lane Lambert is a good enough coach, and he has them playing enough structured hockey, and they have two goaltenders that they can lean on. And if Grubauer starts to regress a little, Joey will probably pick things up and they can ride him instead. I just don't see how the Kraken don't make the playoffs at this point unless they just really actively throw it away.
Yeah, and Dylan, I was trying to kind of figure this out and map this out, and you alluded to my random Excel spreadsheet, disorganized Excel spreadsheet on the post game last night, and I'm gonna just read a little bit from it because I was just trying to go over all the things with this team that don't make sense, and trying ahead of this podcast to see, okay, where can this fall apart, or would it fall apart, and will it? And I was just trying to go even-handed into it. And the conclusion I reached was that I don't think it will fall apart, even though there's lots of reasons on paper that you'd think maybe it should. And the first one among them, you mentioned the schedule. So I'm going to bring up some stats here, Dylan. And I asked you to guess this last night, so you already know the answer, but I asked you to guess how many of the Kraken's 20 wins this season have come against teams in the top half of the NHL standing. So the top 16 versus the bottom 60 or 50, not counting the Kraken.
And just to clarify, this does not mean like teams in playoff position, but just straight up, if you take the entire league by points percentage.
I sorted by points percentage. Yeah. And this is as of like 2 days ago, because this is when I ran the numbers and everything. So it might, things might have switched around a little bit. But as of a couple days ago, how many of their 20 wins were against the top half of the league? The answer is 3. 17 of their 20 wins against teams in the bottom half of the league. Their strength is they have had one of the easiest schedules in the NHL, one of the easiest schedules any NHL team has had in a long time because of this unique way the division is. And so you'd think, okay, well, that's going to fall apart at a certain point, right? The other shoe is going to drop and the schedule is going to get harder. And, maybe that's a reason that they're going to slow down. But I looked at their schedule going forward for the rest of the season. It actually doesn't get harder. That's the thing. They continue to just play bad team after bad team basically the whole rest of the year. It's incredible. I think they're on pace to have one of the weakest schedules that any team has had in the salary cap era. It is nuts. They do not have a stretch. They have the entire rest of the season. They have one stretch where it's 3 games in a row against teams in the top half of the league. And that's Florida, Tampa, Buffalo in like March or whenever that is. Other than that, they don't have more than 2 games in a row at any point against teams in the top half of the league. These are not just like the elite teams in the league. This is just the top half. This is, better than mid. They play. So they are on pace to play 30 out of their 82 games, 35 against teams in the top half of the league and 47 against teams in the bottom half of the league. That is nuts. But it says that, look, it's not going to get harder. They are going to continue to be able to feed and you look at this latest run of wins that they have, this 9-game point streak. A lot of them, it's been against teams in the bottom half of the league. That's going to continue. They can keep feasting on those teams. And I took their points percentage from the games against the top half and games against the bottom half of the league. And I just applied it throughout the whole schedule going forward. You add that up, that's a 91-point pace. That's roughly in line with where they are now. And who knows, this year it might be good for second in the division. Like in most years, that's the wrong side of mid, and you miss the playoffs and you don't get a high draft pick. This year, that could be second in the division.
Yeah.
So I don't see why that can't continue schedule wise.
Right. No, I absolutely think it can. And I think it's like another reason why, like, if asked the question, are the Kraken good? I would say, like, yeah, they are good because they're clearly better than half of the league. The bottom half of the league, they are better than because they crush them, right? That's where all their wins are, is against the bottom half of the league. Now, are they beating teams in the top half of the league? Are they great? No, they're not great. They are just good because they're getting caved in by the top half of the league, right? Like they're not beating them at all when they're there. But I think that you can say the Kraken are good in the sense that they seem to be better than 16 teams in the National Hockey League, and that would put you in the top half. But they're probably worse than 15 teams in the National Hockey League. But I think that firmly puts them in the range of good.
Yeah, I mean, I think not even like I'm trying to think a more specific way, just not bad. They are certainly
Yes,
not
they're
bad.
certainly not bad. Yes.
And I think that is good enough this year. And so like I have so many stats up, whether it's the schedule or whatever, and I just look at what this team is built on, and there are no individual elements that I can say won't with confidence won't continue. There's the schedule thing that I just talked about, and that looks like it's not going to get harder. It's easy and it's going to stay easy. And then you look at the other thing too. It's built on goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
Philip Grubauer being the best goalie in the league, Joey Decord being very good, and I can't say that's not going to continue because goaltending is voodoo. It makes no sense, doesn't make sense, never has, never will. So I can't say with any kind of confidence that's not going to continue, because why not? It doesn't make sense. It's going to continue to not make sense. Right. So I got to throw that out.
What are the odds both of them would fall apart?
Gonna let everyone know. Dylan said that, by the way. I didn't say that.
On wood. I'm just saying, like that's what it would take.
Yeah, that's what it would take. And you've got two very good goalies right now, and that's what it is. We just talked about the fourth line scoring, and yeah, they're not gonna score every single game going forward, but like they're playing well, and the underlying numbers back that up. Yeah. And just, I don't know, they're scoring first in most of their games. You think that might even out, but it hasn't. Like all season, they've been scoring first quite a bit. And it just seems like something that opponents are unable to stop or get in the way of. I mean, the Bruins, hit 2 posts on like their first 3 shots last night, but that stuff keeps happening. So I can't say with any confidence that any of this stuff isn't going to continue. So I'm just left with the answer that, yeah, I think it will continue.
This team, because we can transition to talk about analytics right now, because that's the one area that says that it shouldn't continue. But yes. Like that's the one thing, and as it has been all year. But I do think like the phrase that could sum up this team is like, and certainly with the other like thing that you've been putting together to talk about the recent streak that the Kraken are on, is that the winning will continue until the analytics improve. Which is like a horrible thing to say, but that is basically what's happening. Is the analytics are still not good for this team, and we talked about that during the positive stretch that they had at the beginning of the year, the hot start to the season. We said, look, this is great, you're banking points, you're putting yourself in a good spot. The analytics are terrible. They all say that this is unsustainable. And then they had the losing streak and the brutal month of December and everything. But as we talked about last week, that was actually when the analytics did improve. That was when the analytics actually said they should be winning games. And things have inverted again. The analytics say that they should be losing all of these games, but they are in fact winning all of these games. And it is a great year if you are somebody who does not like analytics and thinks that too much stock is put into them. And I know that there's a decent part of our listener base that feels that way. This is your year to take a victory lap, right? Because the analytics do not match at all what this team is doing. I still think that there is plenty of value in the analytics, and I do think that they're worth exploring. But this year they are not matching at all what we're getting from this Kraken team, and we're into January. Like at some point you would think it would. I just don't think it will at any point this season.
Yeah, I'm convinced. It makes no sense, but I'm convinced. And Dylan, you alerted me to a great article that was written. I know you're gonna probably
Yeah.
bring that up at some point if you have the details up.
Yes, I do. It was actually like a Threads situation from CJ Turturro, talking about analytics models and kind of how busted most of the publicly available ones are, and this is something that you and I have kind of experienced anyway, and we've been talking about over the last year or so. We've come to rely on Money Puck a lot less than we did before, just because we were watching Kraken games, some live game commentaries with everybody, and being like, what we just saw does not match at all what Money Puck is saying as far as the expected goals and for that chance and all of that kind of thing. And so we were already kind of growing suspicious of some of the publicly available models. This year, we've used a lot of language around that just to say, like, internal models probably are saying something different than what these publicly available ones. And what CJ Turturro did was really look at them all and did a deep dive into all the publicly available models, and realized that, look, over the last couple seasons, the NHL has added additional puck tracking data. They have microchips in the pucks now. They're getting additional data. They've also reclassified certain shot types and which areas of the ice they're like calibrating for the different areas. So like the kind of, it's not really like a pie chart or anything, but how they cut up the offensive zone has changed a little bit. But the big thing is they're changing what shot types are, and they're getting more accurate data from the puck itself. And what this has done is it broke that change from the NHL, because all the publicly available models are taking the data from the NHL and then putting it into their model and then getting the results spat out. That changed the raw input of the data from the NHL, but they did not adjust their models for that change in input. And so you end up getting a lot of models that are not lined up with the reality, because they were set up to receive just different data. Like that's just the way it was, right? They were not properly adjusted when that changed. Now, a couple of the publicly available places do in fact take that into account, some more than others. One of the top ones when CJ did this dive was HockeyViz, which is Michael Blake McCurdy's site. You can go to it's just hockeyviz.com. And the reason this one does take that stuff into account is what Micah does is he just uses the last like 1,300 games, basically a calendar year's worth of games. And it's just a rolling model based on those. And so when this player and puck tracking data was changed from the NHL 2.5 years ago, that's already worked itself out of the HockeyViz model, because it's only looking at essentially 2025. So the second half of last season and the first half of this season. So the HockeyViz stuff is actually accurate, or as accurate as it can be, versus say Money Puck, which is still incorporating a model that factors in a lot of stuff that just doesn't fit with what the NHL is giving these days. So it's a really interesting article. I definitely recommend it. It means that moving forward, we were already starting to use HockeyViz more and more. This, I think, really confirms that we're going to use that a lot the rest of the season. A lot of the people discussed in this article have already said that they're going to look into this and make changes to their models, and some have already started this season making changes to their models because they realized how busted they were. But I think here in the short term, at least for the rest of the season, HockeyViz is going to be our go-to for the analytics.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, thank you for bringing that up too, and bringing that to my attention. And so when you brought that up, you're like, hey, maybe we should talk about this on the podcast. I said, absolutely. And so I decided to go in and dive a little bit deeper and look into the HockeyViz numbers and think, okay, maybe there's something we're missing here. Looking at, the Money Puck, the Natural Stat Trick, all the other sources of like, well, this team just seems to make no sense whatsoever. And maybe that was a result of some of these numbers being a little off and the models being busted. Unfortunately, the HockeyViz results are even more baffling when it comes to the Kraken. And my favorite one is this: of the Kraken's last 13 games, in 12 of them, the team with more expected goals has lost the game. it's the opposite result is in terms of shot quality that you would expect. And it matches the eye test, what we've seen. This is why I've been like so frustrated with this team, is because none of the games make sense. So out of those 13 games, the Kraken had 4 games where they had more expected goals than their opponent, more shot quality than their opponent. Good, right? All 4 of them losses. They had 9 games where they had less expected goals than their opponent, worse shot quality. 8 of those 9 were wins. Doesn't make sense. And by the way, this is not just a problem with expected goals models and all this stuff. This is not a league-wide phenomenon. This isn't happening everywhere where you're seeing, often teams, with fewer expected goals win the game and everything. Way more often than not, the team with the better shot quality wins the game on a large sample size. This is not an issue league-wide. This is a Seattle Kraken thing. And maybe they're doing something that's, gaming the models a little bit or looking a little bit different. I haven't seen anyone who's been able to identify exactly what that is or what that would be, but it matches what I'm seeing in that they're getting out chanced and winning games, or the few games where they are getting the better of the chances, they're somehow losing them. That just feels like what it is. It just confirms what I've been thinking, and that it doesn't make sense. And so, Dylan, I've made the decision here. And I think going forward, this is what I'm going to do. Given all of this stuff that I have and this big Excel spreadsheet in front of me and a whole bunch more stuff I haven't even mentioned. I mean, I'll mention one more thing because I think it's just one of the funny stats. But this would also tell me the Kraken need to get rid of Brandon Montour, trade him tomorrow, because without Montour, they're 10-3-1. With him, they have a losing record. They're 10-11-6. They're a better team without Brandon Montour. Now, I know that's not true. Yes. I know he was their best player when he's in the lineup, but clearly the results are better. It doesn't make sense. So, Dylan, in order to preserve my sanity this season, I think I've decided to just take the rest of the year off from any kind of actual analysis.
Okay.
I think I have to do this for my own sanity. I'm going to enjoy the wins. I'm going to enjoy it making no sense. I'm gonna, get behind the playoff push and all this stuff. But I think if I actually tried to do my job and analyze this team, I would go crazy by the end of the season.
I mean, I think there's places to do it still and have it work. I think, yes, from an analytics perspective, there is
maybe you can handle it. I'm sure there's lots of people that can handle it. I can't handle it.
I think you just got to look at things differently. Got to look at the more X's and O style stuff, right? Like the fourth line things we were talking about earlier, right? Analyze how they're scoring. Like that is sustainable. That does line up and things there. But yes, from an analytics standpoint, I totally feel you, because it is a great tool. There is a reason that NHL organizations more and more are investing heavily in building out analytics departments. Some are making analytics people their general managers, right, around the league. Many teams have an assistant general manager that is steeped in the analytics background. The Kraken organization obviously has invested very heavily in building out an analytics team within them. So there is value to analytics, right? Like again, to the group that doesn't ever like seeing it, there is actual value there. It just applies to 31 teams around the league. It does not apply to this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so ironic that the Kraken, again, the emphasis they put on building out an analytics team and kind of leaning into that sort of stuff, that through 5 years, they've become the ultimate, old school hockey, heart shot blocks, grind it out, defy the analytics kind of team. That's who they are.
It is.
Who employs Chandler Stevenson. It's just,
right.
They've been the ultimate, team that has flown in the face of all analytics.
They are, and you still look at it, 5-on-5 offense from Hockey Viz. They're 12% worse than league average as far as generating expected goals for per 60. You look at their finishing rate, that's below average. Power play above average. And that checks out with what we're seeing.
They're a top 10 power play in the league just by results, so that makes sense.
Defensively, they're doing pretty good and everything. That all checks out, except for on the PK. The PK is a mess based on the analytics. But you know what? We see that just about every game. So That one does line up. The analytics and the eye test are matching pretty good there on the penalty kill. But like you mentioned them scoring first in all of these games and then them going on to win. Guess what? Because on Hockey Viz it has 5-on-5 shot rates by score and all the different scores that it could be. And the Kraken are at their worst offensively when they are up by 1 goal in a game. They are 31.2% below league average at generating chances when they have a 1-goal lead compared to other teams when they have a 1-goal lead.
Park the bus.
That is clearly what they're doing. It's kind of crazy. But at the same time, they give up more than average when they have a 1-goal lead, so they're not parking the bus well. It's taking up more than one space in the lot. You know what I mean?
Double park the bus. Yeah,
I was gonna say it's sticking out well past the curb. So, but it's just really, really interesting to see that, like, even stuff like that, like the more you go into it analytics wise, like the less it makes sense, except for the PK makes sense.
Yeah, but that's what I've been saying again, just that this is why I'm gonna just stop doing this, because the further I go, I keep searching and searching for something that ties it all together, that makes it make sense. And the further I go, the less it makes sense. So I just, why do that again? It might just be as simple as they've turned Philip Grubauer into the best goalie in the NHL. I think that's most of it. I really do think that's most of it. And nobody can explain why goaltending happens the way it does. I know there's goalie experts and all this stuff, but it's just the most random variable stuff that you get if you look at year-to-year goalie results. And so, like, that's probably just most of it. And we're spending an hour just trying to figure out why goaltending happened.
I know. It is really weird,
because that would tie it all together. The analytics, the eye test, everything shows that the Kraken are giving up way more chances than they're getting. And you know what makes up for that? Goaltending.
Right.
Like, elite goaltending makes up for that. I mean, what doesn't explain it though is the games that is not explained is that the games where they are playing better and they are generating more than their opponent, they're losing. That doesn't add. I'm going.
I know it becomes this weird, like, circular logic minus the logic, situation, and that's what we've been trapped in for so much of this season, and what we keep talking about on the podcast. So yeah, we probably don't need to go.
So I think the ultimate takeaway needs to just be enjoy this for what it is. Yeah. It is what it is. And just have fun. Like, this is where I really envy the fans who could just, go and watch that game last night, just have a great time and not be hung up on all this stuff.
I will say it was very nice going to World Juniors and just watching hockey, like, in the stands as a fan again, like just enjoying it, not having a rooting interest or anything like that involved, just enjoying the hockey and just letting it wash over me. I definitely envy Kraken fans being able to do that right now and enjoy this run that they're on, because they're on a run. And again, nothing says that it should stop other than the numbers that don't work for this team anyway. So you can ignore them.
Yeah. We've gone through all of it. It's, it's easy. It's going to stay easy. Enjoy it.
Yeah. No, definitely enjoy the games. The Kraken are good by a lot of, different ways of looking at it. And there's no reason that they shouldn't continue to be good. And that's, I think, the moral of the story for the podcast. And we could probably just title the podcast like that. Hit send. We're good. They're good. We're good. Everything's good. You all are good. That's the good moral of the story. You know who else is good? Rico, for sponsoring the podcast and helping take care of everybody in the greater Seattle area. While we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. That's going to do it for this podcast. Everybody, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons. Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.